What?
The young child's speech, acquired in a brief span of time, limited in quantity, concrete in content, but nevertheless extremely effective in communicating to others the child's thoughts, wishes, or feelings. How do children acquire speech? Change from a nonverbal newborn to a 2.5-year-old able to use rudimentary sentences? There are many unanswered questions in this extremely important facet of child development. One concern is whether or not the child begins life with a biologically prepared set of competencies that make speech acquisition easy and relatively uniform for all children. Chomsky's acquisition theory, sometimes called the nativist theory, proposes that the nervous system is programmed with an innate construct of human language. The supportive evidence for this theory is that a child makes very few of the many grammatical errors possible. Children of all cultures go through similar stages of grammar acquisition, and there are special structures in the brain responsible for language function. The other major point of view, the environmental, claims that infants do not begin life with any special biological preparation for language. Scholars who favor this point of view believe that language is learned either through operant conditioning or by imitation. The truth probably resides in a combination of these two theories. Babies are both biologically prepared to learn language in a uniform way, and they actively participate in trying to say what they hear other people speaking, or what they are encouraged to say.
Hi, is Michelle there? Michelle, this is Katie, hi.
There is evidence to show that some aspects of language acquisition begin even before birth. The fetus can become sensitive to language, even to the mother's specific language code, and will remember these auditory experiences after birth. Communication between parents and their child begins at birth, and this interaction is thought to be vitally important to the child's future language development. Newborns as young as 12 hours old show precise and sustained movements that are synchronized with an adult's speech. This movement is usually too subtle to be picked up by direct observation, but can be demonstrated by analyzing tapes of the infant's responses. Schuster states that it is apparently this phenomenon that accounts for the mother's comment, "He acts as if he knows what I'm saying." Turn-taking is a critical factor in early communication. It can often be observed during feeding. Whenever the baby stops sucking, the parent tends to jiggle the nipple in the baby's mouth or stroke the baby's mouth. The baby waits until the jiggling stops before resuming sucking. This back-and-forth interaction continues throughout the feeding and is similar to the rhythm seen in human dialogue. In another example of turn-taking, parents smile at their child, blow on his skin, or catch his eyes. The baby, in turn, returns the gaze, moves his arms and hands, and may even attempt to make vocal sounds. By 3 weeks, babies appear to grin, and their eyes brighten during the interaction. By 6 to 8 weeks of age, the children will actively woo the parents into play. In the beginning, many parents carry on a one-sided conversation with their newborn. However, if they pause between comments to the baby, they will find that the baby will actively attempt to talk with body movements and throat gurgles.
Lauren, hey you. Waited a long time for you to come around here, and now you've got to play. Hi. Yeah, it's me. Lauren. What do you want? Do you want that bottle?
Usually, the parent gets so excited during this interaction that she raises the volume of her voice. This tends to overload the baby, and she then turns away from the interaction. The more practice the child and parent have in turn-taking, the more responsive the baby will be, and the more sound she will make in the interaction. It is evident, then, that even though the infants are not yet able to speak, they are learning many lessons about communication. Later, as the child becomes more competent, parents call her attention to things.
Dumbo? Is that Dumbo?
Over time, parents demand more and more participation and input from their child.
It's a rabbit.
At first, the child responds with vocalization that resembles a word, and a little later, the word itself. It is thought that early ritual games, such as pat a cake and peekaboo, also foster turn-taking. When talking to their child, parents use a form of speech called motherese. It appears in all societies.
Do we need to change your diaper? Huh? Do we need to change your diaper? Huh? Yeah?
In motherese, the pitch of the voice is higher, intonation is exaggerated, and sentences are short, simple, and correct as far as grammar is concerned. There is a pause between utterances and phrases, and words are often repeated. Also, special words such as potty and night-night are used.
Did you go potty? Huh? Do we need to change your diaper?
In the very young child, motherese is used to convey affection and to alert the child to the task at hand.
Daddy?
Near the end of the first year, motherese changes and becomes closer to adult speech. Although it is still slow with simple sentences, emphasis is placed on the meaning of words.
Can I go see Sam? The doggy and Grandma and the girls?
The focus of conversation is on the here and now. For example, parents usually talk about what they or the infant are doing or will be doing in the near future. They talk about subjects that are interesting to the child and use words that will be most useful to the child. There are many studies that show that motherese facilitates early language development. However, with the exception of a child completely isolated from human speech, almost all children develop speech, providing the parents talk to and with them. To review, infant communication occurs before the acquisition of language and is important for language development. One aspect of communication, turn-taking, cues the child to the rhythm of conversation and the give and take of human dialogue. Motherese increases the child's awareness of the world and objects in it and facilitates early language acquisition. Language acquisition proceeds rapidly during the first 2.5 years of life and is somewhat predictable in most children. During this period, children will acquire two important aspects of speech: semantics, or the meaning of words, and syntax, the grammatical rules that specify how words should be combined in sentences. Both develop simultaneously during these early years. It is known that infants only a few days old are capable of distinguishing between phonemes. Phonemes are the basic sounds of a language roughly corresponding to the sound of the spoken alphabet. It was found by monitoring infants that they could distinguish the phonemes ba from boo or do. This is a fine distinction that is amazing, considering how young and inexperienced they are. It's interesting to note that young babies can also distinguish sounds not heard in their native language. For example, Japanese babies can distinguish the phonemes ra and la, sounds not found in Japanese. Over time, however, infants lose this ability, probably due to disuse. Their brains are not required to process these sounds. At about 3 months of age, infants begin making cooing vowel sounds, such as A, E, U. These represent the child's first spoken phonemes. At about 5 to 6 months of age, infants begin to combine the vowels with consonants to produce babbling, an innate competence found in all babies around the world. Babbling is a reflection of the amount of excitability the child is experiencing and the child's tendency to express this with vocalization. Some also believe that in babbling, the child is playing with or practicing making sounds. While cooing and babbling have no symbolic meaning and are not predictive of the child's future language abilities, they are important because the child's cooing and babbling stimulates the parent to verbally respond to her. And this, in turn, increases the child's efforts to verbally communicate. Although the infant under 1 year of age is usually unable to speak, he is able to comprehend much of what is said to him. Throughout infancy, the child's receptive language, that is, his comprehension of words, is always much greater and more sophisticated than his expressive language, that is, his own utterances. And during the period from 1 to 3 years of age, the infant will comprehend 5 times as many words as he produces. The content and tone of the parent's words, of course, contribute to the child's comprehension. Language comprehension of a young child can be tested by asking her where an object is located. If the child understands the word book, she will look at it or perhaps even point to it. To associate a spoken word with the object it stands for and to retain a stable name for it requires two abilities. First, the baby must be able to recall the representation of the object named even when the object is not visible. Secondly, she must be able to recognize the meaning of a word no matter who says it. Toward the end of her first year, a child's babbling becomes more complex. Long involved sequences called expressive jargon occur occasionally. These sequences may be meaningless in content, but they possess the pitch and stress of adult speech. By listening carefully, it is often possible to pick out words or phrases that the child has embedded in the jargon. They give clues as to the child's intent. By the end of the first year, an infant's speech repertoire has expanded greatly. It now includes nearly all the vowels, most of the consonants, and many of the intonations of the language environment. The infant is now mature enough to speak her first word. There is no clear moment dividing a child's babbled sounds from her spoken words. Usually, the parents hear and understand the first word before strangers do. Intelligible speech is said to begin when a child consistently uses a word or phrase to stand for an object or idea. For most children, that occurs between 10 and 14 months. The child's first meaningful sounds are forms of words called morphemes, which are the smallest unit of meaning in a language and include sounds like mama and go. This one-word sentence usage is known as syncretic speech, and infants throughout the world use it. The meanings that can be conveyed by this universal speech form are of course limited, yet a child's sophisticated use of the tone and inflection of her parents' language, along with her whole behavior at the moment, makes the form adequate for rudimentary communication. Her parents can usually understand her meaning and serve as translators for relatives or babysitters who do not understand the content of the child's speech. In general, first words are those that are part of the child's immediate experience, words such as bottle, mama, daddy. Many, such as up and bye-bye, are associated with some movement or action the child can do. Of course, the earliest words have some flaws, such as a limited range of sounds. For example, the word bottle becomes one vowel and a consonant, ba. And because of articulation, the pronunciation of ba may range anywhere from b to bo, or da to na to baba. But since the mother knows the child's language skills, she is able to correctly interpret the child's ba, and she understands its meaning. Another problem is that a limited syllable repertoire forces different words to sound the same. A child's behavior, tone, or inflection will usually tell the parent whether she means ball, bottle, or bird.
Is this a ball? Mm-hmm.
The variety of sound combinations is also restricted when two-syllable words are attempted. A child may simply repeat a sound, such as kiki for kitty, or make the second syllable from a particular vowel sound she likes. Words that have many syllables are often said in just two syllables. The child simply omits the unstressed syllable.
Is that a banana?
Banana.
To review, language acquisition begins with phonemes and then moves to morphemes and words, is more advanced in the receptive area than in the expressive, and formally begins with syncretic speech, the consistent use of a word or phrase to stand for an object or idea. By the time the child is 1.5 years old, he associates an object with the word representing it, distinguishes familiar from unfamiliar words, and selectively hears certain important parts of sentences spoken to him. Between the ages of 18 and 24 months, his vocabulary may increase more than tenfold. However, since acquisition of a new vocabulary is slower than the child's need to use it, he overgeneralizes at first, using one noun for many items in different categories. This is sometimes called overextension or overregularization. For example, go-ee might mean a walk, the sweater he takes on such outings, and the stroller. Also, he will usually have one noun for different items in a single category. For example, he might call all men daddy, or all animals doggy. It is interesting to note, however, that if the child were shown a lot of different toy animals and asked which is the doggy, he would pick out the dog from the others. Thus, it would seem that the child uses overextension because he does not know the words for the other animals, rather than because he believes all animals are called doggy or that all men are called daddy. Underextension may also be seen. In this, the child uses words in an overly restricted manner. For example, she may use the word blankie only to refer to her own security blanket. As her concepts become more differentiated, she needs and begins to use an increasing number of labels, new words for these concepts. In general, adults can label objects at several different levels of abstraction. A puppy is Chip, a chow, a dog, a mammal, or an animal. Young children use words such as doggy that are at the intermediate level of abstraction. The next universal stage of language development is the two-word sentence usage, sometimes called telegraphic speech. The two-word sentence permits the development of a grammar and includes the use of the three basic tools of any language: intonation, word order, and verb conjugation. The child used intonation and gestures to convey meaning with the one-word format of syncretic speech. With the two-word sentence, through contrast in the emphasis he gives to one word or the other, more numerous and complex meanings can be expressed. Daddy ball can indicate possession. Daddy ball can indicate destination or action. Word order also becomes a factor in expressing meaning. After having heard the typical English word order of subject, verb, and object for 2 years, the child now begins to use that word order within his two-word format. Daddy throw, throw ball, daddy ball. Through word order and intonation, the child can express more than a dozen conventional relationships. For example, possession with my ball, action with throw ball, or quantity through more throw. The two-word format permits a child to ask questions. Because the child is very concrete and plays an active role in language development, the first WH question is usually, what's this or what's that?
What's this?
What is that?
Where is usually the second question, after she knows the name of objects. Why and when require more sophisticated cognitive skills and consequently do not emerge until the preschool years. Their enlarged vocabulary and the two-word format will make it possible for children to begin to change some of their aggressive behavior and to verbally express their feelings and wishes. Verb conjugation presents a problem because most common verbs are irregular. At first, however, apparently imitating adult usage, a child is likely to use the correct form. As the child has more experience with language, she begins to recognize that most verbs add ed to form past tense. She generalizes this new information and so says Bunny falled instead of Bunny fell.
Bunny followed. Feet hurt.
This overgeneralization also occurs with words that are plural. At first, the child may correctly use the term feet hurt. But then, as she learns that S makes an object plural, she again generalizes. Feet's hurt. Berger states that although technically wrong, such regularization is actually a sign of verbal sophistication, since children are clearly applying the rules of grammar. Over time, children spontaneously correct these grammatical errors. It is interesting to note that children at a very young age learn to speak in a manner that is appropriate within the context of their present situation. This appropriateness is an aspect of language called pragmatics. For example, a child of 2.5 will use baby talk when talking to a doll, but will use a deep voice when giving a command to a dog.
Bring me up a please.
Sure.
Children will also use please more often when addressing a person they perceive has a higher status. These are examples of imitation in which children learn attitudes and social behavior through observation and repeat them in their own interactions. To review, by the middle of the 2nd year, the child is developing the ability to retain the concept of an object, its location, and its name. Normal difficulties in speech acquisition include overgeneralization, that is, using one noun for many items in different categories, underextension, that is, using words in an overly restrictive manner, and an inability to label objects at different levels of abstraction. With acquisition of the two-word sentence, the child uses intonation for the expression of more numerous and complex meanings, begins to use the typical word order of her native language, and attempts to conjugate verbs. Normal difficulties include overgeneralizing rules of grammar for irregular verbs and adding s to all nouns. Parents and those working with young children can facilitate language development. Two important measures already discussed are turn-taking and motherese. Another is naming rituals, which begins between parent and child when the child starts to utter sounds that resemble words. Parents point to an object, give it a name, and after their child attempts to repeat the word, correct what the child says. Naming rituals are extremely helpful because comprehension is increased when an object or action and speech sounds are paired. With older children, a technique called expansion is used to facilitate language development. When a parent talks to a child, she may correct grammar, expand on what is said, or fill in missing words.
I'm making helicopters.
You gonna make a helicopter?
Helicopters.
Expansion seems to be an excellent teaching device. The adult gives the correct model, the child is attentive, semantic content does not change.
Oink, you're gonna make a pig?
A study has demonstrated that children who showed very rapid speech development versus those with normal speech development had mothers who spoke more clearly, let their children lead in conversation, made fewer ambiguous or unintelligible statements, and responded to their children's speech attempts with related contributions. These are all components of effective turn-taking as well as modeling.
Where do eggs come from?
It's come from a city party.
It came from the ceiling, Fatty. Okay.
Although reading to children does not usually require them to actively respond with speech, it facilitates language development because it introduces the child to words, rhythms, and sentence structure. It has also been found that watching educational television programs such as Sesame Street helps children learn vocabulary, numbers, letters, and other language information. This learning is enhanced when parents encourage children and watch with them, but also occurs when the child views the program by herself. Television, however, cannot be substituted for human speech interaction. For example, it was found that a child with normal hearing born to deaf parents had quite profound language problems when his only source of language was television. The acquisition of human speech is a complex process. Once acquired, the child will be able to share another's experiences, talk about memories, express visions for the future, discuss abstract ideas, theories, and philosophies, and negotiate complex problems, and all with the use of language.